travelers, and welcome to another episode of Virgin Stars Podcast fourth season. My loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. Enjoy this amazing interview because Tim Wynn boards the mothership. He's the composer of Final Destination Bloodlines. Now, come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hi, Mr. Wynn. Thank you for coming to Virgin Stars Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Totally my pleasure. So, I always start off with a question of inspiration. So, what inspired your love for music and who your earliest influences?
Um, I think for film scores, one of the main influencers is Gustav Holst's The Planets. It's a famous orchestral suite,
Hmm.
or in the 20s and 30s, and I always found it interesting as um, I got into it that there was no Pluto. Well, Pluto wasn't discovered until 36 it was, or
Hmm.
35. And he finished Gustav Holst finished it a few years before that. So it has a very cinematic quality to it. So I think that was the first inspiration that I had. Debussy, Claude Debussy is one of my other personal favorites, and how he wrote Prelude to After the Fawn, and it just has a very filmic quality to it. You can really see see what he's describing as a composer. So
Oh, I mean, I love the piece for the planets. I remember talking to Cliff Idleman, and he was saying that that was almost the soundtrack to the Star Trek Six before they changed their minds.
yes,
So that was the thing. And I find it ironic that he didn't use Pluto's planet because he didn't discover it, but now it's not a planet again, so it still works. At the end of the day,
it still works.
90 years
It's
later,
Back
it
to the
works.
Future. And I forget somebody who wrote Pluto to add to the Gustav Holst of Planets, and now it kind of looks like they've got egg on their face. They got to, but it'll come back around. It's always in fashion.
They got to do a dwarf planets version, right? These are only the dwarf planets
Absolutely.
we're going to cover.
I'll pick series, if possible.
Oh man, that's awesome. That is awesome. Do you have a favorite planet?
I mean, I think Earth is pretty high up on the list, but some days maybe not. Saturn, I mean, I guess that's kind of everyone with the rings. It's easy to say. So I'll go Saturn. I think when you're a amateur astronomer, which I'm a very amateur astronomer, when you can see that in the middle of the night, especially in the winter sky, and see the four moons that you can see, so clearly. I think it's just magical. Just something about it. So Saturn is the one that really can, kind of give your dreams and inspiration, I think.
I always wanted a telescope. I had one telescope that I bought from the Salvation Army. It did not work apparently, and that's why it was only
They
20 bucks.
Yeah, I mean the one that I was using, had all those gyros, and you're supposed to put
Yeah.
like take me to Saturn, and it doesn't work. So I basically did the old just point, and it's the point to the brightest or second brightest. Jupiter was brighter that night, but when you can see it in real life, there's something special about seeing Saturn. And I was writing a score, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was, looking up at the sky and just seeing it. I just think it just hits a little different when you see it in person.
So when you're looking at the sky, you said while you're composing a piece, was that for inspiration? Was it like is was the space your muse at that moment?
It was just, yeah, take a break, go outside and enjoy yourself. I think sometimes what happens as a composer, you're sitting there
Hmm.
and you're trying to come up with new ideas, and you're just struggling and fighting and second guessing yourself all the time. And I think the best thing that you can do is actually step away and just listen to nature and get your head in another place. And so I think for me, sometimes, a lot of times, I'm walking dogs or looking at the planets, and a new idea pops in your head, and then before you know it, you're finishing the cue that you felt like you could never write.
Now, I imagine, having never been a composer for reasons that I'm bad at it, um, I assume composers get writer's block just the way like I write comic books, like a comic book writer gets writer's block. I'm sure this is a similar thing for
Yeah.
composing. When you're trying to break out of that block, especially for a specific piece versus maybe just composing for fun, but I'm talking about like a project, is it a certain little sound that hits you that kind of unblocks it? Is it a just like a character like, hey, I never thought about this particular character? Is it something else that gets you out of that block?
Well, it changes from format to format because when you're writing for TV, we talked about Supernatural before we started. You don't really have the luxury of a lot of time, so you have to really, if you have writer's block, you kind of have to really learn how to fight through it pretty quickly.
Mm.
Um, so what I find is that it's easier to edit a bad idea than it is to just sit there and stare at the screen and just go,
Mm.
I just can't feel it today, or nothing's coming out of my head. So. I will just power through. I will write whatever comes to mind. I'll take a step back. I'll listen to it, maybe curse a few times and say, I might as well quit because this is the worst piece of garbage I've ever written in my life. And what am I doing? And then lo and behold, about 10 minutes later after that, another idea comes, a thing changes, something goes, and then, it's suddenly before you know it that you're back on track and you're writing really good music again.
Now, in a related type question, do you write the music first and then figure out the instrument, or do you use an instrument and then figure out a piece from the instrument that you're thinking about?
Well, I think I've done both. It depends on the score. If you're doing a guitar-based score, then you're definitely going to pull out the guitar and do it. But I would say I sketch mostly with strings. Piano and strings, I think, would be the main instruments that I use to sketch. But if you're doing a score that has woodwinds, I think it's important that if that's going to be the lead instrument that you play it. It has a different timbre, it has a different quality than the piano for sure and strings. So if a score that I'm currently working on now is more woodwind based, so I will write with whatever woodwind I'm deciding to use at that moment.
So, you're currently the composer of Final Destination Bloodlines, which for one, if not 2 weeks, was number one movie in the entire country. Congratulations. Uh,
Yeah, thank you.
so, how do you get involved with Final Destination Bloodlines?
It started with opening up Twitter and seeing what the whole world saw at the same time that Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein were directing Final Destination Bloodlines. I worked with them on the first show I worked with them for 3 seasons was Disney's Mech X4. And we had a great relationship then. I moved on and did Freaks with them right after we finished Mech X4. Had an amazing experience. Got really good reviews. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's on Netflix right now, and you can catch it. But it's a pretty fun film. And so from there, we were about to start working on Freaks 2 when this all happened, or we were planning on working on Freaks 2 somewhere around that time. And then I saw that they were working on Final Destination Bloodlines, and I'm a big fan of Final Destination, so I've always dreamed of, working on this franchise. So for me, it felt like a lightning bolt struck me a little bit, and it was like, wow, here's this opportunity that co can come along. I really need to, reach out and ask them. They've probably already picked a composer in my mind, and or the studio had a composer that they were going to use, and I checked with them, and they said they hadn't picked a composer, but it's a studio film. There's going to be lots of hoops to jump through, so don't get your hopes up and, we'll let you know kind of thing. And I said, well, I personally would, I felt like I really was the right composer for it. I felt like there was just two, parts of the world that were coming together that I felt like I wanted to take a chance. And I said, look, let me write you, instead of telling you that I'm going to do a great job, let me write you the theme for the movie, and then we'll see what we'll see. And they loved what I did. New Line Cinema loved what I did, so it just felt natural to score the film.
Now, I mean, obviously, Horror's right in your roadhouse. As we mentioned, you did a lot of well, you did many of the episodes of Supernatural. So, I mean, it's Horror's
Yeah,
heavily in your
15
blood,
seasons. Yeah.
over the 15 seasons. So, what is it about? Is it that just kind of gravitates, or you gravitate towards the horror side of film and television?
Well, I this one of my teachers at USC where I went to was Chris Young, and he's famous horror composer. So I loved listening to his scores, and I feel like horror movies And I grew up listening to Jerry Goldsmith and The Omen and Poltergeist, and I mean, you can name it. And so I just loved how their scores, the musical language that they were saying. And so I felt like doing horror is something that I really appreciate doing. But I like doing all sorts of styles, but this is a style that I feel very comfortable in.
Now, I'm probably gonna be wrong with the numbers, so feel free to correct me.
Yeah.
Final Destination Bloodlines is the sixth movie in the franchise, I think.
Yeah, six, number
Six.
six.
So obviously, you're different composers for the other films. When you're thinking or when you're approaching something like Bloodlines, which is a six movie in a franchise, are you viewing it as a movie on its own, or are you viewing it as part of a franchise? How much did you want to invoke the sounds of the earlier films, and how much did you want to make this something that exists on its own away from the other movies of the franchise?
Well, I think I looked at it both ways. It was a movie where we're starting over from 14 years ago, so it needs to have a different voice, but it does need to feel like a Final Destination movie. And like I mentioned earlier, that I already wrote the theme for the movie, and what I wrote for the demo pretty much is exactly how it comes up in the film. So I already had started down that path of creating a new musical voice. When we spotted the film, we were thinking of ways to how can we incorporate for the fans and just for the movie's sake as well, how Shirley Walker's incredible first Final Destination theme. So the director Zach Lipovsky had a great idea, and he said, when Bloodworth comes in, why don't we use Shirley's theme for it? And I said, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So it kind of underscores Bloodworth's moment in the movie, and it works perfectly.
Now, my memory, and again, correct me, Shirley
Yeah,
Walker composed a lot of the Batman animated shows. Is
yeah,
that correct? Okay, I
yeah.
knew, I knew that. I had
She's
to.
great. Yeah, she really did an amazing job.
She, oh yeah, she did also. When you're when you're doing, like I said, when you're doing something like Bloodlines, is it helpful or less helpful to know that it connects to that long line? Because on the one hand, as obviously you have something to work from, but at the same time, you got to make sure, as you mentioned as well, that you're distinct enough to be your own movie. Is that more burdensome or less burdensome?
You have it in the background in your mind a little bit, but I don't want to like listen to it over and over again. So I think I probably listened to a few of her pieces just to remind myself of what it sounded like. But I didn't want to have it like, oh, I listened to it 4,000 times and then I'm just going to rewrite her theme. But that's not what I was going for. So I wanted to, in places in the movie, echo what she was doing and kind of familiarize myself because I hadn't worked with the producers yet. I've worked with the directors, but I'm not sure what the producers wanted and New Line Cinema. So I wanted to have an idea of what she had done and what Brian had done as well for the prior films. So I kind of gave it a little listen, but but I didn't want to listen to enough, so it would get in the way of me writing.
Now, the other interesting I think about horror, and again, correct me, is that when you're composing a scene normally for a movie, right? The scene kind of helps dictate, and having read the script dictates the direction your music's going to go in, right? You got to follow the scene, and music's
Yep.
going to go in that direction. Horror is slightly different in that the suspense for the audience is not necessarily knowing what's going to happen, and you can't kind of give away the end of the scene before the audience gets there because that's the shock, the horror, right? That's
Right.
scary.
Right. Right. Right.
How does that affect how you plan a scene when you have to kind of hold back at times what's going to happen, or you have to put in a fake cue so they start getting built, the tension builds, but nothing's going. You know what I'm saying? How do you start
Yeah.
making those decisions?
Well, I think as a composer, the biggest thing that is a challenge when you're ever looking at any scene is picking out the tempo. Once you've picked out the tempo of what it is, it's just kind of mathematics of, well, it's going to take 8 bars to get to this part where you're going to stop, and you're going to take 4 bars to get to that part, and what have you. So getting the pacing right is the most critical part of scoring it. So like you mentioned in horror, you know, the first time you're going to see the scare, it's not going to be the giveaway. So you have to keep some tricks in your bag. So when you really need it, you can pull out, the higher octaves of the orchestra or whatever it is. So if you're really, really, really listening to the score intensely, you'll know that I'm not giving away, like, there's definitely tells if you watch the movie a second or third time of where, like, oh yeah, the character's definitely going to get it. So if you analyze it, you can pretty much figure out that, like, oh, that's why he did this or he did that, because there were, I couldn't give it away all at the very beginning for sure.
Now, for those who are watching and want to learn to become a composer like you are, what are some of the, like, can you give away a tell? So, like something you bring in there. So, you know what I'm saying? As you mentioned in the film, that maybe another composer could learn from.
Yeah, I mean, whenever, especially for Final Destination, whenever the death theme comes in, usually bad things are going to happen to the characters. So, if there's just a dark theme that kind of coming up and kind of gives you something, well, then generally speaking, that just means that they're going to get off or scot-free because death really wasn't there and death didn't have it in their design, and it's just, kind of scary music. But once you start hearing the theme, then trouble definitely is going to follow.
See, that's interesting too with the idea of death because unlike some horror movies like Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th or Halloween, death isn't necessarily a tangible character. You can't be like,
Right.
there's Freddy Krueger. That was Freddy Krueger's scene because he's there. Death is kind of like this nebulous, intangible thing that kind of presence that kind of exists throughout the movie, right?
Right. It's invisible. You don't know, like you said, the other things that, they're people, they're characters, so you kind of have to rely on the director or what they shot of, like, when are we going to start to tell them that death is here? So that was one of the parts that we all tried to figure out of when is it supposed to be spooky or scary, but when is really we're telling the audience that death has arrived and it's about to go down, you know.
Now
And
one
and
thing.
I think, like, after watching it with an audience now for, I got to watch it numerous times in test screenings, but watching it now that the movie's completed and seeing it for the last few weeks a few times, the audience is there for those kills. They're really excited about, who's going to get it and when, and so I'm very proud of how the music sort of highlighted that point and made the scares scarier and the laughs funnier and everything about it. So that, it's been a treat watching it, with sold out crowds for the last 2 weeks. So,
Yeah,
if anyone's wondering to see the films, I'm sorry to give you an ad, but please watch it with an audience. I think it is so much better than watching it at home alone or streaming it or something like that. So that's my opinion.
well, I got to watch it with my wife, and we went to theaters and we watched it. And I would say the deaths are a lot of fun. And, you know, it's hard not to get caught up in the fun of the deaths because, I mean, they're very creative.
Yeah.
Deaths, I mean, they're gruesome, but they're also kind of fun on the same in the same way. I mean, so it's like, I mean, I get it's definitely horror, but it's kind of fun too. I mean, you on some level you are kind of rooting to see how the death is going to play out.
Oh, you're rooting, and I, after watching the world premiere, I guess a couple weeks ago now, um, seeing it with an audience that had most of them haven't seen it. There are a lot of the people that were in the movie were in there, but I started to think to myself that, is this a horror movie with comedy or a comedy movie with horror? I
Mm.
don't know. I mean, it's kind of up to the person, but that's what I think that makes the Final Destination franchise, so creative, is that it doesn't take itself seriously. It's not, this isn't, Shawshank Redemption. This isn't, a movie that is so super deep. It's supposed to be a fun ride, and I think they did a brilliant job, making it that way.
So when you're scoring, are you how much do you want to play into the fun, that kind of fun part of it all, or how much do you want to stay within the horror genre in your pieces?
Well, there's only a few places where I play at the humor, just when they're doing or investigative stuff, but you can't make it too funny. I think One of my other teachers at USC was Elmer Bernstein, and he always, he wrote some of the best comedy music there's ever been. Stripes and
Oh, good movie.
Ghostbusters. I mean, just to name two right off the top of my head. And he always plays it straight, and that's what makes his music brilliant. He doesn't like play it comedic. He plays the straight man. And so I tried to do that for my score as well, and I've done that through many of my scores. Is I always harken back to what Elmer said. It's just play it straight. Let the actors and the jokes be funny. You don't need to accentuate it.
Mm. And like that, it was a lot of fun. I know my students, I teach, and they're like, "Are you gonna interview anyone from the Bloodlines movie?" And and I told them, actually told one today I was interviewing the composer, actually,
Okay.
and then it was very cool. They're ready. I imagine how excited they were about these movies. Apparently, they're huge fans, and they're in junior high, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. They're huge fans of Bloodlines, Final Destination, but they are.
I think it's real. I mean, that's what the kids like when when I was 13. I mean, this movie would tickle me, pink. It's such a great, fun ride. So I expect, 13-year-olds to 21-year-olds just love this sort of movie. There's not any sex, there's not any drugs, there's no nudity, there's cursing and there's killing, which yes, there are bad things, but nowadays with the way the internet is, it's probably not it's probably tame compared to what all the other 13-year-olds have seen at this time.
Well, it's also a very different type of death. I mean, when most horror movies is either someone who's out of anger or someone who's psychotic. This is just death doing death.
Exactly. It's
It's
like you can see the scythe coming out pretty much, and just it's just coming to get you, because it's fate. It's not
right.
it's not it's not that you're a bad person. You're not being tortured. You're not It's not a demonic thing. You're not going to hell. You're not in a box underneath the ground and, suffocating. All these other ways that I feel, to me anyway, are much scarier. And even the deaths that we have here, MRI machine, all these different deaths, they aren't to me the scariest deaths. The scariest deaths sometimes are when the smallest things happen, and when Howard gets, well, I don't know how many spoilers I'm supposed to say, but there is a place where someone steps on a piece of glass and it proceeds that's the end of his demise. But to me, I can imagine stepping on glass all day long. And so those are the scariest moments for
Mm,
me in a movie, or in Final Destination. It's
right.
like the little things. It's not when, they fall off a bridge or they got their head lopped off or something like that. They are somehow, they're scary and they're great, but they're just, for me, it's like when little tiny things start happening. That's really what gets me.
Well, I will say I got to interview Uncle Howard,
Oh
and
yeah.
he did point out that his death is in the trailer, so it's
Oh,
totally
that's true. That's
spoiler
true.
one.
You're good point. Good
So
point.
so feel free to spoil that
He's
one.
safe. Yeah, yeah, it's safe. Yeah, yeah. And I love seeing, like, and any fans of Final Destination, go look around. I'm sure it's all over other socials as well, but on Instagram they're doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And I heard a little bit about it when we were scoring the film, but I mean it's pretty much all business. So I can't sit around and talk to the directors. Yeah, tell me how you did this shot and this and that. So our time was valuable. So now I'm seeing all this behind the scenes stuff, and it's brilliant. I mean, I love it. It's just like every death scene they're like, oh, this is how we did this is how we did that. Every day they're going through a new one, so check it out. It's really
Well,
cool.
I think the part that shocked me the most when I got to talk to him, his death, for some reason, and most of these deaths, I assumed was CGI. It was like my assumption, the way it looked. But he said apparently it was actually practical effects.
It was practical. Yeah,
Yeah,
a
they
lot.
had,
They try to do much practical effects. Yeah.
yeah. I was shocked by that. I was positive it was CGI. I said no, that looks real. It's probably CGI.
Yeah, yeah. No, they did. I mean, they built the whole Skyview, restaurant, and that was wonderful. And when I first got I got hired before they shot it, and so I was anxiously waiting for the film as it came to me, and so I started seeing the dailies pretty early in the process, and how Zach and Adam set up the shots. I mean, it already looked amazing without one effect whatsoever, and so it got me really excited. This, I guess, now 2 years ago that was happening, and and you had to keep, you knew this was going to be a really special film. At least I assumed it was. And I just, you have to keep it all bottled inside and not tell anyone about anything, for this time. So I feel like the last 2 weeks, letting it all out, it's like I'm like intoxicated in a weird sort of way because it's just been built up for so long where, oh my God, I can't let anyone know anything. I can't send a picture. I can't, gotta make sure everything is right, because everyone holds their cards tight to the vest when it comes to Final Destination, and you don't want to ruin any part of the movie for anybody because it's such a fun ride. So yeah, it's been fun doing all the interviews and coming out and hearing people like yourself, like kind of tell me, what parts of the film they liked. It's pretty interesting.
And my guess is that when you were composing to unfinished versions of the film. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't even think I ever got to a finished version, a completely finished version. A lot of scenes were in their final state, but there definitely was like some of the video effects or some of the special effects came in at the last minute, but it was all mapped out pretty good, and there wasn't much of a problem. When the first time I saw the finished film is when we were doing the dub, when they married the music and the sound effects at the very end with the final picture, and so that's when I finally saw its last cut, and that was it.
Well, and maybe I'll apologize to the actor who was Uncle Howard, but my favorite scene is not his death. The MRI
Yes, that's okay.
scene is the best death. I don't know how you
To
argue
me
that.
that was my favorite one to
But
score. I mean, I loved how they set it up. I loved that there was comedy. Um, you know, just go, they were Eric and Bobby going through and looking for a way to, kill Bobby and I just love the whole setup with it and what I did for scoring, I tried to have every death have a kind of a unique sound a little bit, and so this one, since it wasn't an MRI machine, I relied heavily into electronics. I still have orchestra in there, and as I did throughout the whole score, but I threw in more electronic elements, and I also used the sound of an MRI machine to pepper the percussion, and so it gives you a kind of a machine light quality that I think if you turned off all the titles on your Apple playlist or whatever it was for you would know where the MRI death is. It's pretty obvious of which one of the other cues in the soundtrack for sure.
I think it was a brilliant scene because once again, that's also the one when you have the two deaths. Um,
Yeah.
but, um, but one of the deaths is definitely death. The other one is a circumstance of being around death. Or did you view both of being part of death's plan?
Well, Tony Todd kind of gives it away earlier. It says, if you fuck with death, things get messy. So, um, they were trying to screw with death. Eric was trying to kill Bobby, and that's not what death had in mind, and he got in the way. So, you know, you know, they out comes a wheelchair, and lo and behold, he saw it in half. It's that's unfortunate.
Another great piece that I think is called the end credit suite. Um,
Yes.
Brilliant piece. I really enjoyed
Thank you.
that one. And my understanding is that that beginning is Death's theme. That cello sound is Death,
Yes.
correct?
Right.
And it is a cello, or am I wrong on that one?
Yeah, cellos are doing the death theme for sure, and some lower woodwinds, but yeah, the cello registers where the death theme comes.
Now, I'm either, let me know if I'm wrong on this one as well. I It reminded me a little bit of the Jaws theme in that kind of primal, almost inevitable quality to it. Was I right or wrong
Yeah,
about
no, 100%. I mean, I didn't sit there and say I want to write something that sounds like the Jaws theme, but I having that exactly that inevitable quality. There's no way you're getting away from this thing. So it's kind of the same thing that what John Williams did, a long time ago. That I felt like it was just a menacing, low sort of bombastic-y theme that I wanted to create, and like you said, it's like it's inevitable. There's no death. You can't cheat death. And so far, in 6 Final Destination movies, nobody's cheated it yet. They're they're all going to get it. I don't know, maybe Final Destination 7, they'll all hold hands and everyone will survive, but I don't know. I don't have any secrets about that, so we'll see. We'll
Well,
see.
you would assume seven is going to happen because six is, I think, the highest, the biggest moneymaker in the franchise.
Yeah, by a long shot. It's people were pretty excited. The producers, we were texting all weekend, and everyone was like, "Wow, these numbers gonna outperform. We're really looking good." And my hats off to everyone that made the movie. But I think the marketing for New Line and Warner Brothers, I think they did a brilliant job. And every day it was something new, and it was all creative and brilliant, and I think it really like tapped into what people were waiting for after 14 years, that just something fun. And I, I don't know how you are, but I'm waiting a little bit, just like with all the COVID and this and that. I just feel like we've been out of the theaters for so long,
Mm.
and I don't know if it'll ever get back to the peak time when the theaters were such a draw. But I love seeing movies with an audience and in the sound system, and you can't beat it for the experience that you get. So, I think they did a great job of getting people out and into the theaters. So I hope that we get to do a Final Destination 7, and I hope I will get to work on it if they so deem it so. And I think it's a fun franchise to work on for sure.
It's kind of funny. The day I saw, I went to Bloodlines with my wife, and earlier the same day, I went to Thunderbolts with my father. And it was the
Oh, okay.
first time I had been in a theater, though, in like 2 years to
Right.
go see a film, and I happened to go two in the same day. But it was a fun, it was a really fun experience. Um, and like that, and Bloodlines is a good movie to go if you're married, take your wife. And I kind of think she's even a bigger fan of Final Destination movies than I am usually of horror movie, but you got to go
Yeah.
with your spouse.
Yeah, I think so. And again, I mean, it has something for everybody. It's funny. It's got gore. I remember the early test screenings that we were watching, and I was watching the people get interviewed after the fans getting interviewed, and they're like, "Yeah, who wants more gore?" And everyone raises their hand. It's like, "Okay, great." And we just edited a little bit more into it. They shot a ton of it, so that we were covered by all bases. We didn't have to do any reshoots for gore, but it's funny seeing how the fans are. It's like more, 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 more. And I'm like, gosh, it's already pretty. I'm already doing this, and like shielding my eyes when certain deaths are happening, and But I think it's fun. I think the way they do it, it doesn't feel like it's super serious. It just feels like it. It's just like it's kind of a fun ride for sure.
And it's interesting when they released it, because usually this time of the year is your blockbusters, something like Final Destination usually is your Halloween time.
Yeah.
But and to put it up against the tent poles of the other studios, that's pretty ballsy. That's when you know you have a feeling that something's working.
Yeah, it tested high the whole time we were in that mode. The studio heads loved it. They believed in it. They supported us. Everybody at Warner Brothers and New Line was just brilliant, really, really, and it was a dream to work on it. It was a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. It was super long hours and long months, and it was not easy. But how everyone's attitude working on it, we all wanted to give something to the fans. They're so amazing, and they're so vocal, and we wanted to make them happy, and I think we did a good job of that.
I mean, I think so. And just as a testament again to the quality, as I mentioned with the tent poles, like I said, you have Thunderbolts. It's
Yep.
coming right before Lilo and Stitch live action was going to be. Everyone knew it was be a huge hit. Mission Impossible 8. I mean, these are huge, huge tent poles, and they felt Final Destination, and it did. It stood its ground in between them to be, like I said, as you mentioned. I think it was one week as the number one movie in the country. I can't remember if it made it through the second, but it didn't. The drop off was
I think
actually
we're
pretty low.
third. I think we're third now, or third or fourth. But yeah, I think it's a good. We got a nice run, a nice week of really high numbers, and we're still doing really good numbers. And I think it works well. I mean, the people that are going to go see Lilo and Stitch are a different crowd than maybe Final Destination. So, and now people may want to watch it again, because the interesting part of of it. So the next time you see it, maybe you won't see it in the theaters again, but maybe you'll see it streaming if you feel like watching it again. There's a lot of Easter eggs to find. I mean, it's just it's not like a one level film. I mean, it goes super deep, and the score does too. If you go back after watching it and listen to it, you're like, oh my God, that sounds like that's the Doppler effect, which is kind of evocative of a train. Well, what happens at the end? I don't know. I don't want to tell you, but so there's a lot of little things like that, and the directors were putting it all over the place, and I would be watching a scene and going, "Oh my God, that relates to this, and that relates to that, and that was in the other Final Destination, this and that." Like, yeah, the number on their jersey is the same number. I mean, everything ties into everything. So if you're looking for a reason to like rewatch it, I swear to God, they could have a drinking game of like, oh, well, how many times they do callbacks to the other Final Destination movies, you would make it 20 minutes before you're drunk. I mean, it's pretty amazing the stuff that they did and the care that the writers and the directors and the producers, everyone that they came into it, that they had a vision and they executed it.
And I think it's really cool too that you guys and you specifically are paying attention to the box office like I do. I'm a box office kind of like nerd just a little bit. Like I like watching, and for those who are wondering, like Bloodlines, I think I had A- cinema score. It had the drop, second week drops like 58%, which is unheard of for a horror movie. Usually it's about 79% drop in horror movies because usually they come out the first weekend. It is killing it. The soundtrack is absolutely awesome. So for our listeners who want that soundtrack, where are they going to find it?
Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere. I think I saw it on YouTube even the other day too, as well. YouTube Music and things. So, yeah, I think it's a fun ride. There's a lot of music. Most of the score is in there, and I appreciate you listening to it. I'm really proud of the score.
So what's next for you?
Right now, what I can talk about is Zach and Adam are filming, or they filmed Freaks 2, and we're now in the editing process. So that is going to be ongoing throughout this year, and that'll be out at the beginning of next year at some point. And then after that, I mean, there's other things that are in the hopper, but I can't really mention it. But yeah, Freaks 2 is coming out. We're really proud of that film. Zach and Adam the story behind it, if people aren't aware of it and why you should watch it, because they were waiting, they had all these great scripts, but they were waiting around and people were like, well, we don't want to produce this, don't want to produce that. They said, you know what? Screw it. We're gonna like borrow every penny we can. We're gonna make it ourselves, and we're gonna go to old school filmmaking and just beg, borrow, and steal to make their film. They had their dream and they went out and they did it. They achieved their dream by doing it, and that they got on the radar of other studios and things like that, and this eventually led to Final Destination. But I think it's just a testimony to if you see something you want to do, just go after it. And um, I was inspired by these directors during Mech X4, but just because they were great to work with. But then when we talked about Freaks after it was all done, I was just like, you guys, you inspire me because you're living the dream. You have to make your own breaks, especially in this business, and you didn't want to just sit around and wait for it. And you had a great script and you executed it, and it just led to great things. And I feel like Zach and Adam are going to just do brilliant work for the rest of their careers for sure.
Do you want to announce Final Destination 7 for everybody? Those are moments.
I wish, but as somebody that is in the post-production part of it, because I was talking to my wife about it. I mean, I'm on a need to know basis, and generally they never let me know anything. So I would probably be the last person to know about it. But Craig Perry, I can't give you his email address, but he's the one that you want to ask. If the fans really want to know, talk to him. He will be the first to know, guaranteed.
I definitely will do. And Mr. Wynn, thank you for making a wonderful soundtrack. I definitely got to find a way to get you back on to talk Supernatural at some point because me and my father
Absolutely.
used to watch every single episode for all 15 seasons together. We get together to watch the episodes. So I definitely got to talk to you about that. I want to thank you so much.
And again, that's a fun. I love that show too, because I'm not saying it has echoes of Final Destination exactly, but it has. It's funny. It's a real and the comedy in Supernatural was brilliant, and I loved working on the show. And similar to Final Destination, it's the old saying, find something you do that you love to do, and you never work a day in your life. And that's both of these projects, Supernatural and Final Destination, really felt that way because the people that were making it, Eric Kripke, I went to school with him, and it was just brilliant, I mean, and Zach and Adam are that same sort of brilliant, and when you get to work with those type of people, it's fun all day long. It's long hours, it's a lot of work, but it's so much fun.
And they actually did a Final Destination themed episode, if memory serves.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Was it season six or I think it was six? I think they did the Final Destination, or was it five? It was one of the two.
you know what, I will say that it's a long time ago, and I'm not going to remember all the details of those sort of things like that. So there's uh but yeah, yeah, and that's what I thought was so brilliant. And the Scooby Doo, themed one. I mean, just like it's just funny. They don't take this stuff seriously. They're talking about the end of the world and all that sort of stuff like that. But it didn't feel like like you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. It had a release. It had the funny episodes. They had all the drama between Sam and Dean was great. I don't know. I find it. I think and I think they're moving it to HBO. So if you're Supernatural fans, I think you're gonna have to get an HBO subscription and start streaming it there because it's gonna be it's gonna be on there. I think starting December this year. So
Like I said, it was one of my favorite shows of all time. The first, in my opinion, around six seasons are some of the most brilliant television ever made. The rest of the show is actually fantastic as well. But Mr. Whalen,
good.
thank you so much for coming on the show. You're awesome.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate it, and thanks to you all for listening.
Have a good night, sir.
Thanks, Jeff. Take care, man.